Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tankers of all ages, Sir Harry here again, and welcome back to my user-friendly tank series. In this series of videos, I'm trying to feature mid-tier tanks that are pretty easy for new and less experienced players to play, that are a lot of fun, and that are on tech tree lines that go somewhere you want to get. They have really good high-tier tanks. First and foremost, though, wow, what a couple of weeks it's been. I was really honored. Jingles picked me up as a shortlist nominee for his 500k subscriber contest, and since then, the views have been coming in, the subscriber count's been going up. On my original T150 video, over 1,200 views and almost 50 subscribers now. So thanks to you guys, because obviously the reason I'm doing this is to get content out there that you want to see. And so far the comments have been really positive. Thank you for those. And thank you for subscribing, those of you that have. And if you haven't, hey, please think about it. So today in our user-friendly series, we're going to look at a Tier 5 German medium tank, but not the one you think, because most people are immediately going to think of the Panzer IV-H. And the reason for that, of course, is that it's a good tank, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But it also is on the tech tree line that eventually gets to the Tiger. And the Tiger is one of those tanks that's so iconic. When people start playing World of Tanks, it's probably one of the first tanks they focus in on trying to get. Now, we may talk about the Tiger in a later video. It's maybe not quite cracked up to what it should be historically. Quickie Baby did a really good rant about that a while ago. But we are going to talk about the Panzer III-IV and compare it to the Panzer IV-H and talk about the tech tree and where this tank goes. So here we are in the garage looking at the Panzer III-IV, and lots of this tank is going to look familiar, and there's a good reason for that. This was originally envisioned as a cross between a Panzer III and a Panzer IV. Late in the war, the Germans wanted to kind of consolidate their logistics chain by coming up with a common medium tank chassis that took sort of the best of all worlds. So you can see like what looks like a pretty common standard Panzer IV turret, but a hull that almost looks a bit more like a Panther with that sloped armor that the Germans adapted after they first encountered the T-34 in Russia. You can see the 6 drive wheels, so that's a Panzer III looking suspension there, and again the Panzer IV type turret on it. This is a fantastic little tank. It never actually made it even to prototype stage. It only existed in blueprints because, of course, at that point in the war, late in the war, the Germans had all kinds of other things on the go and things to worry about, and this never saw the light of day. I guess probably good for the Allies. So looking at the stats, 440 hit points, that's not particularly good compared to its counterparts at Tier 5. It's quite a bit less than some of its contemporaries. What this tank does have, though, is mobility. 55 kilometers an hour forward, 18 in reverse, and with almost a 23 horsepower per ton specific power, when you push W, this thing goes, and it can outmaneuver and outrace just about anything else it's going to come up against as far as its counterparts, again, at Tier 5 for the medium tanks. Combine that with a hull traverse of 36 degrees a second, and a turret traverse of 56 degrees a second. That's a combined 92 degrees a second. So you're doing 90 degrees every second at 55 kilometers an hour. You are going to be running rings around the competition. You can run rings around other mediums. Forget heavy tanks, tank destroyers, and self-propelled guns. This thing is a close-in knife fighter, and it can basically outduel anything at Tier 5, and I would argue most things at Tier 6 are going to have trouble if this thing gets in and starts running circles around it. When we look at the armor stats, you may think the Panzer III-IV is at a significant disadvantage to its cousin, the Panzer IV-H. Respectfully, I think you're wrong. The Panzer III-IV has 60 mils of frontal armor compared to 80 millimeters on the Panzer IV, but look at that slope. That's almost 45 degrees slope, and when we get to the armor model, you're going to see, I think, all round that the Panzer III-IV has better frontal protection than the Panzer IV-H. Side armor, 60 millimeters, and look at the slope on that. Again, it's probably about 20-25 degrees of slope. You back out from a corner, you can side scrape with this tank against equal or lower tier opponents. The Panzer IV-H has vertical armor, and it's only 30 millimeters, and I would dare you to side scrape in a Panzer IV and not take some damage. You'll see in one of my videos, I actually do a bit of that against a T-24, and it works out okay. I do bounce some shots, and if you angle this correctly, I would suggest this armor is far superior to the Panzer IV. Looking at the gun, this shares exactly the same 75mm gun, the L48, with the Panzer IV. 14 rounds a minute. That rate of fire is 1 round per minute slower than the Panzer IV-H for some reason. Wargaming, I don't know. Please help me. 110 penetration with normal rounds, 158 with APCR, 38 with high explosive, and the APCR and the AP rounds both do 110 damage. If you manage to pen with HE, you're doing 175, which is great against low-tier tanks, but I really only carry usually a few high explosive rounds just to reset or if I run into a very lightly armored scout or something. The accuracy, unfortunately, is .39. It's not great. You'll see in the videos the aim circle is pretty huge, and it's got a 2.3 second aim time, which isn't terrible, but because the bloom is so big, it takes a while. It takes about 6 or 7 seconds to fully aim if you've just moved the tank and the turret. Of course, one drawback to the Panzer III-4, the Panzer IV purists are going to point out, is that this cannot mount the 105mm derp gun, which of course is super fun, bombing around, nuking Tier 3, Tier 4 lightly armored tanks with a single shot. But you know what? For a good all-round performer, the 75mm is absolutely the best gun on both of these tanks. So here we are in tanks.gg looking at the effect of that sloping on the actual armor ratings. So the lower glacis 61 becomes 71mm, the upper glacis 60 becomes 75mm, and these are head-on zero deflection shots, right? We'll see what happens when you angle the hull. The turret, Wargaming says it's 50mm, tanks.gg disagrees and says it's only 45, and notice the weak spots on the hull, the vision port and the machine gun port. If we angle though, and this is about a 45-degree angle, it's a pretty severe angle, lower plate becomes 78mm, and upper plate becomes 80mm. That's great. That's going to bounce and ricochet a lot of stuff at equal tier and maybe some higher tier stuff too. And the side is almost 80mm as well, and that's a combination of having 60 mils of armor and having it sloped at that kind of 20-25 degree slope. The turret, unfortunately, doesn't get a big buff when you angle it a bit. It's only 51. So the turret's kind of a big giant weak spot on top of the tank, and we've got another 50 mils on this ginormous commander's cupola. But you can bob and weave and duck in this, and you can't do that as easily in the Panzer IV-H. So looking at the Panzer IV-H in the garage, you look at this thing and it's a box. It's a big, giant, square box. It screams, shoot me. There's lots of flat surfaces. It's really tall. Look at that front glacis where the driver's port is. Look at the front lower glacis. They're basically vertical. They're flat surfaces that people are going to want to shoot. And you've got big sides. You've got this spaced armor on the sides, these screens, and they were originally put on to stop shape charges like bazooka rounds and things like that from penetrating the tank. They do help a little bit. And you can see here, look at this. We've got 83mm effective on the lower glacis. We've got 80mm effective on the upper, which is about what we'd expect because they're essentially vertical. It's the same thing that Wargaming gave us. But look at that. That sloping bit on the front, 20mm of armor, and it only goes up to 22 with the sloping. That's about a quarter of the entire front silhouette of that tank is 22mm. High explosive can penetrate that. You are going to take a lot of damage if people manage to get through that. 50 mils for the turret, same as on the Panzer III-4, no surprises there. If we angle, you can get those two vertical surfaces on the front up to about 90. 86, okay, for the front one there, it's not quite as well angled as the lower glacis, but 23 again at that angle. So, you know, if a Hetzer puts a high explosive round at you and hits that big front plate on the angled bit, you're toast. 34 mils on the side if they can squeeze a shot in around the spaced armor. But look at that. The spaced armor is going to stop heat rounds. It's going to absorb some damage from high explosive, so you should be okay. Again, the turret 54. The commander's cupola has that heavy band of 90mm of armor, 95 around the middle of it, but above and below that it's only 30. So again, lucky high explosive shot hits that, you could be taking a lot of damage. So doing a tank compare between the Panzer III-4 and its main rivals at Tier 5, the Panzer IV-H, the M4 Sherman, and the T-34, you can see right off the bat that this tank has a pretty good DPM, not quite as good as the Panzer IV-H because of that 1 round a minute difference that we talked about earlier, but certainly a better DPM than the Sherman and the T-34. The penetration and damage for both of the German tanks, however, is a little bit lower, but again, the higher rate of fire is going to make up for that, and the overall DPM is going to be a bit higher. Looking at the gun, aim time and accuracy on the German tanks is better than the others. The Sherman has the same aim time, but the accuracy for both is a bit better, although it's still not great. And again, we'll see some examples in one of the replays coming up. Dispersion, 0.2 on the move, 0.2 on traversing the hull, and 0.14 on traversing the turret. Not bad, but again, the gun bloom does get pretty big, and it can be kind of frustrating sometimes if you're trying to poke around corners and get snapshots off on enemies. As far as maneuverability goes, this is where the Panzer III-4 is by far superior to all of the other main Tier 5 medium tanks. Forward speed we talked about, 55 kilometers an hour, is second only to the T-34, which is 56, but because of that specific horsepower we talked about, it is up to that speed really fast. It takes forever for the T-34 to get up to its max speed, and so this Panzer III-4, again, you push W and you are gone in a shot. Terrain resistances are on par with the Panzer IV and the Sherman, slightly better than the T-34, but again, that traverse speed, when you combine hull traverse and turret traverse, 92 degrees a second, there's absolutely no way any other tank in its category is going to compete with that. So looking at the armor, we talked a lot about this. We looked at the models. The Panzer III-4 looks like the poor cousin to the Panzer IV, but because of the sloping, because of the 60 mils on the side, to me this has better all-round protection than the Panzer IV. It's easy to look at that 80, but forget about that big giant weak spot on the front of the hull. The hull armor much better than the M4 Sherman and T-34. The turret armor slightly weaker on the German tanks, but you've got the speed, you've got the maneuverability with the Panzer III-4 you don't have in the other tanks. So you know what? It's harder to get hit, and if you do get hit, the angling does give you a fighting chance. The health 440 is the worst in class, 10 less than the T-34, which is second worst, and a lot worse than the 480 that the Panzer IV-H gets. That's one of the big knocks against this tank, but again, don't get hit, don't get penned because you're fast and you've got sloping armor. The extra hit points, well, maybe they're not that big a deal after all. The other big drawback to the Panzer III-4 in my mind is view range. Now I've got coated optics mounted on this one for purposes of demonstration on tanks.gg. I've got coated optics on all of them. 360 meters. That is terrible. And it's actually significantly worse without that. It's about 320. So if you don't put optics or at least binos on this thing, you are blind as a bat compared to the competition. Look at that, 415 for the M4 with optics, and still a lot better for the Panzer IV and the T-34. So optics are a must, and you're going to have to rely on some of your allies to spot for you. And if you're not and you're out in front, then speed, maneuverability, dodge and weave, and try to avoid getting hit by somebody waiting in ambush. So finally, we'll take a quick look at the German tech tree, and we'll look at the Panzer IV and Panzer III-4 lines. In the middle there, you can see that the Panzer 38T goes up to the Panzer 38NA, and then the Panzer IV-H at Tier 5. So pretty good light tanks leading to a good medium. We get to the VK 3001P, and then the Tiger P, if you don't divert off and go to the 3601H, and to the one that everybody wants, the Tiger. So lots of great tanks in that line leading up through the Tiger II, the E75, and then the big boys, the Maus and the E100. So Panzer IV-H is a great gateway to some good lines that get up to some really good top-tier tanks. I think, however, that the Panzer III-4 line, again, doesn't get as much respect, but it leads to really nice places as far as high-tier tanks. The Panzer III-A to the Panzer III at Tier 4, which I think is a really great little Tier 4 light tank, very maneuverable, good punchy little gun. Panzer III-4, up to a couple of kind of weird tanks, the VK 3001D and the 3002D, which kind of play a bit like the Panther, like their counterparts on the other tech line. Slopey armor, kind of nice punchy guns. You get up to the 88mm on the 3002D at Tier 7. And then you get to the Indian Panzer, and this is one of those kind of mystery tanks. Not a lot of people play it, not a lot of people have it. It is a very solid all-round medium tank. It's a lot like a Panther II, which is its counterpart at Tier 8. It's a lot like the Mutz, which is the new premium they released not too long ago. Very capable, relatively mobile, good punchy gun, pretty good armor. It'll bounce a bit, and it leads up at Tier 9 and 10 to some really, really nice tanks. The Leopard Prototype A and the Leopard 1. A lot of people like the Leopard 1 when they finally get up there. The Prototype A has its detractors, the armor's junk, but they both have really good guns, fairly good mobility, and they're good, solid, all-round medium tanks at Tiers 9 and 10. So the Panzer III-4 does go somewhere really great if you want to be patient. The Indian Panzer is awesome, and the two Leopards are actually really good as well. So I've got two really quick replays for you today. This one is actually 4 minutes and 18 seconds. It is a barn burner. It's a Tier 6 match on Kharkov, and I'm in my Panzer III-4. You can see that we've got relatively balanced teams as far as XVM is concerned. The other team maybe has a couple of better players at higher tiers, but you know, it's not too unbalanced. Certainly not like some of the stat padding seal clubbing fests that you get sometimes. So I'm heading east towards the big traffic circle. I've got a Crom B with me. The Cromwell B is a really, really amazing Tier 6 premium tank. It's arguably as good or even maybe a little better in some regards to the regular Cromwell at Tier 6. And we immediately head over here. I spot an M5 over behind the buildings there. I spin my turret around just in the off chance I might be able to get a shot through, but no, he is on the other side of the buildings altogether. Now, we've got an enemy Cromwell YOLOing into the middle of the traffic circle. I'm not entirely sure what he thinks he's doing. He gets into the dip there, and we start to get some shots at him. You can see here the gun is taking a long time to aim on the Panzer III-4. We talked about that. It's really about 6 or 7 seconds if you want to fully aim in, and I'll be honest, with 50 millimeters of front turret armor against a Cromwell, I'm not sitting still for 7 seconds. So we do manage to get a hit in against him where he's popping up and down. We're trying to weave back and forth. We don't have time to aim. He thinks better of his choices now, backs out. We get a couple of shots into him. That's really great. And eventually he is killed. So the center of the traffic circle is clear, and now there's a Skoda T-25 across the other side there. I auto-aim on him. We get one shot into him. We get another shot into him. This is a really strong Tier 6 Czechoslovakian medium tank with a 3-shot autoloader. Absolutely brilliant tank. He backs off again under pursuit from our Cromwell. I have a bit of a dirt moment here because, of course, I was in sniper mode and I wanted to turn right and head across the circle in pursuit. I tried to drive over the barriers there, and of course you can't. So here we go. We're bombing across the square. You can see the mobility now, repositioning across the battlefield really quickly in the Panzer III-4. If I was in a Panzer IV, I would just be absolutely left behind. The battle would be over before I could get in on it. The enemy team is now contracting really on the north half of the map. Our team is completely flanked around them, and in fact are now starting to envelop them from the east. So let's say this game is basically all but over. It's 7-1. So now it's kind of cleanup time. But I wanted to show this replay. It's not so much because it was a nail-biter, but really because it highlights some of the real strengths of this tank and a couple of weaknesses too. So the mobility we talked about, absolutely phenomenal. Now we're into the thick of things here. I see a Valentine around the corner. Nice little Tier 4, num, 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 num. And take a shot on him. But, oh, no, there's a TOG. So Tier 6, premium tank, no armor, really fast-firing, punchy 17-pounder gun, though. Back up, get a shot into him, and now I see there's a low-health SU-100Y. I assume he's backing up. No, he's not. He's facing me. I am so lucky there. He fired armor piercing. If he had actually done full damage, 440 average damage is actually exactly my hit points. He could have killed me with one shot. He had a slight low roll, and I was lucky to escape there. Big mistake. I should have tried to bob out, duke a shot, and then let him fire and miss me, and then go in for the kill. So I load an APCR round to get through his frontal armor. Here's an A20, and look at this angling here. I angle, and combined with the 60 mils of armor angled at 45 degrees, plus the angling of the tank, this A20 is absolutely bouncing rounds off me. He's using the 37 mil cannon, 46 millimeters of pen. So you know what? If that had been a Panzer IV and he had hit that weak frontal piece on the front glacis, he could have penned all those shots. And the 7 shots he bounced off me would have been 280 damage. And a Panzer IV-H may very well have been out of the game. The Matilda IV, really nice little premium Russian medium tank. He's cornered now, and we surround him and get a couple of shots into him. There's 2 tanks left on the enemy team. There's a BDR, nice big heavy French tank, and there's a T-67, the really fast American TD. They're down on the other side of the map. My team is absolutely swarming around them. I figure, you know what, I'll have to fight through my own friendly tanks to even get a shot at those enemies. So I'll just go to the cap circle, use the mobility again. We'll get over there, we'll get a couple of cap points, because I'm very unlikely to get any additional damage in this game. And there's no chance I'm going to cap out before they're dead, so I'm not going to rob my team of any damage or kills. But you know what, I'll get a few more experience points by getting some cap without necessarily hurting my teammates. So that's the first battle. That was 4 minutes and 18 seconds. So what a barn burner. I got a first class out of that. The A20 was nice enough to give me a Spartan medal, of course, because he ricocheted 7 shots off my front when I was on very low health. I got fire for effect, so I did more damage than the health points of my tank, the hit points of my tank. That's like a minimum acceptable standard for me. That's what you should be striving for. And we came second by experience with 752, 979 damage. So that was pretty good. I was happy with that. And we made a 19,000 credit profit. So now our second battle. This is a Tier 5 battle on Winter Himmelsdorf. So winter in Himmelsdorf, it's Christmas or whatever, and everybody's happy. So this is another barn burner, 5 minutes and 8 seconds. Again, it's a Tier 5 battle, and we're at the south spawn. In a medium tank, I'm either going to go hill, or I'm going to head over and take a look at the 3 line. So hill, if you have good gun depression, I absolutely recommend it if you're a top tier medium tank. This tank does not have great gun depression. The Panzer IV does have better gun depression, although it is going to take a while to get up that hill in a Panzer IV. So we head down the 3 line. I pull a complete tomato move here. I angle out, which isn't too bad, but I'm in sniper mode, and you'll see I actually pull out farther, and I'm giving my right side road wheel to an enemy, and there's a T-24, and look, he gets me. He actually gets me on the far side, but he could easily have tracked me there and burned me down if I hadn't used my repair kit. So now I turn, I side scrape, and you'll see a couple of times here I am actually going to take ricochets. Now this is where the aim time on this gun I think really lets you down when you're trying to pop in and out from behind cover. This T-24 and I play pokey back and forth for quite a while. We really don't manage to do much to each other. You can see here I'm waiting for aim. It hasn't even started aiming. Now it has, but he dukes, and I put a shot past him. So this is some pretty bad shooting from me, but I'm going to blame the gun in part. I know better players would be able to hit more of these, but this is really a pretty terrible situation for kind of that went nowhere near. Where the heck did that go? That almost went to the outside edge of the aim circle. So you can see this is not a gun that you can pop in and out, take snapshots with any amount of reliability. So, but if nothing else, I'm keeping him busy. Oh, and I've been flanked. You can see now there's another tank, a Skoda T25, Panzer T25, sorry, that's the German premium equivalent of the Skoda T25. Doesn't have the 3-round clip, thankfully, just single shot, and he managed to sneak down the train tracks there. We had a light tank guarding there, the flank there, but I think he's actually dead, or he's about to be dead. Yeah, he's about to be dead. It's a BT7, so he's not long for this world against the Panzer T25. So he's gone in behind the house there, the rail yard, and I'm going to start poking out again to see if I can get any visibility back on that T-24. But no, I don't. There's a Stug coming down there, Stug 4. That's the reward tank, actually, for the first set of personal missions. And a lot of people don't like the Stug 4. I don't mind it. It's pretty good. But because it's a reward tank, not a premium tank, you don't get all the extra credits you do for a premium tank. But it's still pretty fun to play, and it's a bit of a collectible, too. So I'm still looking here, trying to figure out if anything's going to come out, if that T-24 is going to pop back out. And, in fact, what is going to happen in a second here is there are going to be more tanks creeping down the one line behind some of those rail buildings and behind the fence there. So still nothing. And in a second here, you're going to see I get surprised. Yep, so we get a Stug 3B. That's the Tier 4 German tank destroyer. And he actually puts a shot through my front there. And I didn't notice. I was so much into this game. He actually killed my driver. And so everything you see from now on, I talk about the mobility on the Panzer III-4. It's with a dead driver. So that actually is pretty impressive, considering that I'm at a disadvantage as far as my driving skills go. A Panzer III-K, the new German Tier 5 premium medium tank, pops around the corner. The Valentine and I track him in place and finish him off. That's what could have happened to me earlier in the game there when I pulled that tomato move and came out sideways. The Valentine's going to progress here, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to go down and I'm going to see if I can finish off that T-24, because he's got to be on low health by now. So I head up the 3 line, and you can see again the mobility of this tank being put to good use. But I see on the mini-map there's actually a Churchill 1 backing out. He was moving west along that road, and I stop in time to aim, and he pops out, and look at this, I've got shots on his drive wheel, and he is tracked, and look at that, the rubble pile means that he cannot get his gun to bear on me. I am completely safe from him, and I am just absolutely harvesting his health. Hit point after hit point, shot after shot, fully aimed. You can see when aimed, this gun is actually pretty accurate, as long as you're safe and you can stay and aim without taking damage. And we finally burn him down, and even 700 damage on that Tier 5 British heavy tank. Very happy with that. I noticed on the mini-map there was a Chi-He way over on the 1 line behind some of those rail buildings. I am a little worried he might decide to pop out onto the 3 line, onto the road I'm on, and hit me from behind. And sure enough, there he is. Yeah, derp, there we go. Into the wall. Should have tried a handbrake turn, I guess. And I get undercover. He puts a shot towards me while on the move. Absolutely not even close. I do the same. Not even close, and I notice my team has just killed the T-24. So I'm going to set off in hot pursuit of that Chi-He back towards our cap, because we're doing pretty well here. The game, I think, is pretty much in hand, but you know what? I may as well try to take that Chi-He out, and not that he has a real chance of capping, but you never know. So now you can see there's a Churchill 3 still in our spawn, and it turns out this guy's AFK. So this Chi-He is having a field day harvesting his health, getting lots of XP, taking out the hit points from that Tier 5 Russian premium tank. This is a version of the Churchill that the Brits sent over to Russia as part of the Lend-Lease program to help reinforce the Russian military in the dark days of the war. So it's a great little tank, a lot of fun, and I actually may do a review of that at some point. So the Chi-He burns down the the Churchill 3. I do auto aim, and look at this mobility, circle strafing around the Chi-He. He can't move fast enough. He can't traverse. He puts a shot towards me there. He's going to miss, and I take him out with 3 shots. That's the last kill. Game over. GG. So very happy with that game. And there's an ace tanker. And one of the few I got on this tank. I haven't got a lot, but I haven't played it as much lately. And a fire for effect again, same number of hit points as my health, and I got the high caliber, so that's really great. 1,274 damage, 916 XP, very happy with that. And that's not a really high number of XP for an ace tanker. That's pretty good, actually. And we made a 30,000 credit profit. So very happy. Good little game in the Panzer III-4. Very good matchmaking, of course. It was only a tier 5 game. So that's the Panzer III-4. Let me know what you think. Leave some comments. Are there any other tanks you'd like to see a user-friendly video of? And please consider clicking subscribe. Love to have you join the channel. This is Sir Harry. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers.